Hello, kia ora, g'day, I'm Philip Duncan from Weather Watch TV on YouTube with your Australia forecast for the next week ahead. We've got quite a few things to talk about at the moment. We've got a tropical cyclone. It's an unnamed one that is leaving the tropics. It is falling apart. It's going to at least within the next 24 hours. It's a borderline system. That's the reason why it's not named, mostly because it's leaving the tropics and will start to fall apart quite quickly. But Norfolk Island will get some wet weather and certainly the humidity as that falls southwards and unravels. The extreme heat continues on in the southeast quarter of Australia. We're going to focus on that in a moment with some latest maps. And we've also got the showers continuing on just south of the mainland, although some of those showers have brushed South Australia this morning and some parts of Victoria. Not necessarily widespread for everybody. A few thunderstorms in there too, just spilling over into the southern parts of New South Wales and around Tasmania. Cloud, mostly dry though, as that situation continues. And then the next set of wet weather, you're going to go all the way up into the tropics, and that's where we've got thunderstorms and still a fair bit of low pressure. So you can see here on the air pressure map, low pressure from the Gulf of Carpentaria across the Northern Territory and all the way down to southern parts of Western Australia. So this line of instability carries on. We've got all that heat trapped inland because the high pressure belt to the south is kind of holding it in place. But the next high that is moving in the southwest corner, that is the reason why we're going to get a refreshing change coming in by Sunday. But for now, that heat dome is trapped inland and is not being blown away at this stage. And then you've got the tropical cyclone over here. Like I say, it's an unofficial one. It is gale force winds around the center, but it's running into this big, strong, high pressure belt with the easterly winds that will tear it apart over just the next 24 hours. So let's kick off with the heat maps again. Just focus this time more zoomed in to the main areas affected. So still a very large area here in the pink and purple. That is where we're seeing that extreme heat, 44, 48 degrees and above is possible. But on the coastal side of things, 22s and 18s and 20 degrees right at the coast itself. So there's a 20 degree difference or a 25 degree difference or even more than that between those of you in northern parts of Victoria and those of you perhaps right on the coastline. So that is this afternoon. Now as we go into tomorrow, it drops a little bit further southwards. So it comes more into Victoria, more into South Australia, so more populated places will notice that extreme heat going into Friday. Again, coastal areas won't be as hot, but even the temperatures right into the coastline could be up into the mid to late 20s or 30 degree mark, which is warmer or hotter than it is for today. So Friday's a pretty hot day. But once we get to Saturday, starts its journey northwards. So we do see a more refreshing change coming into large parts of South Australia. Still pretty hot though in Victoria. It will take another day or a bit later on going into Saturday before you'll notice that change. Unless you live right on the coastline or up around Melbourne, those areas there will certainly notice the temperatures easing back off, just backing off a wee bit as we go in towards the later part of Saturday. Still a pretty hot day though in a number of areas and coming in here into Queensland. And so once we get to Sunday, what a change. Refreshing for many places, temperatures back into the 20s in a number of areas. And in fact, even on the coastline, you might be only around 18 degrees or so. So that is definitely a refreshing change coming through. Tasmania, sorry you're cut off on the map for this time, but the temperatures there are down into single digits by nighttime. So definitely a colder change on the way as those southerlies push that extreme heat back to places that are perhaps more used to having that higher heat and humidity. So let's go back to the normal map. So here we are Friday. You can see what I mean by the red arrow showing that the heat expands southwards as we go through into Friday. High pressure is between Tasmania and New Zealand, and the next one pretty much south of about Esperance, well offshore. So there's still a more refreshing breeze in the southern coastal parts of Western Australia, but that heat comes further down towards Perth as we go into Friday. A lot of dry weather around. There might be a couple of showers here and there, nothing too much showing up. You got to go right up to the far north and the top end. Those are the areas most likely to have the wet weather on Friday. Jump over to Norfolk Island. What was a storm no longer is. So now you've got easterlies, humidity, and some wet weather coming through, but probably nothing too extreme. By Saturday, that low falls apart even further. Still low pressure out here in the Coral Sea, low pressure around the far north Queensland. The heat is changing. So the blue arrow indicates that cooler airflow that is coming into the very coastal south of South Australia. You'll feel it a little bit more in some parts of Western Australia, but because that easterly's a little brisk. The heat's still coming down a long way. Many areas will still be hot going into Saturday. But that tropical low up here is worth monitoring because the rainfall could be quite intense. You know, again, we're talking maybe 200 millimetres falling in just 24 hours. The usual thunderstorms around Catherine and the top end, and a few showers. They'll be more isolated in that pale blue shading that you see around large parts of inland Western Australia, and maybe a little bit of rain relief here into South Australia, but it's not going to be very much, sorry. We do have a few thunderstorms that could still pop up in New South Wales. They'll be pretty isolated as well, but they could be heavy, so you never know. And a slightly cooler change coming into Victoria's coastline may bring in some cloud and just a couple of showers. Otherwise, not much more to talk about. So Sunday's when we get the cool down. The heat around South Australia and Victoria, it goes northwards. Similar story in the southern half of New South Wales and the ACT. That change will occur at some point going through Sunday. But as you go further northwards into New South Wales, coming up to the northeast corner, north of Newcastle, still got that heat, maybe pushing out further to sea for some of you. And then down in Tasmania, in comes the southerly, the cold southerly, dropping temperatures for you significantly as we go through into Sunday. Elsewhere, just monitor that wet weather still around the far north. It could come down to about Port Douglas. Then the top end's got the usual thunderstorms, maybe a few more thunderstorms showing up around northern parts of Western Australia, but a lot of that blue shading means you're at the bottom of the scale, more likely to be cloud buildups, but could be some thunderstorms that appear there. So let's go into next week, the 2nd of February. We've got high pressure ballooning out south of Adelaide, south of Melbourne, and around Bass Strait in particular. Could still be a couple of showers for Tassie, but it won't be much. So that zone, that squash zone we talked about yesterday where the isobars get squeezed together. So the wind is still expected to be a bit strong in some areas. Northerly winds mostly, or north to northeasterly winds mostly for New South Wales and the ACT. In Victoria, they curve around more as an easterly, as you see also for South Australia, but it kind of fans out, fades away. As I've said for the last few days, if you need rain, this is moving around, and it has done in the computer models. You keep seeing it changing exactly where the rainfall is going to be. So at the end of this, I'm going to show you the two longer range rainfall maps to try and make some sense of it, because it is messy. These are sorts of showers that will sort of bubble up and form, and they may not necessarily form exactly as the computer model shows you, because the high pressure belt matters. High pressure, like lungs. They breathe in, they expand, they breathe out, they shrink. And every time it does that motion, which it does every single day, it changes and alters exactly where you see some of those showers around. And we're also seeing some wet weather up here around Cairns. That low actually stays offshore going through next week. So that means more humidity, more cloud, more showers around the Queensland area. Plenty of showers are expected to form, but they're not necessarily going to be around all the main centres. But we do see a wee bit of energy around the border of Queensland and New South Wales, and easterly winds coming through here. Brisbane down into the Northern Territory. So the wet weather that you saw for the last couple of days when we updated you, and I said, don't really lock it in, it's gone from this map today, and that's all because of these high pressure zones further to the south. So we do expect it to be fairly warm, not the extreme heat you've just had, although around Western Australia and coming back into South Australia, you will notice those temperatures going up as that heat drops southwards further into Tuesday. And by Wednesday, that heat pushes further into New South Wales, mostly the northwest quarter of it. And that's where you've got that line of convergence. Some thunderstorms coming out of Queensland and into northern central parts of New South Wales. Still got those easterlies and showers from the Sunshine Coast down to the northern rivers, and that fades out the further down you go into New South Wales. Maybe some mountains, the mountain areas may get some downpours, maybe a couple of thunderstorms for you. And Tasmania, still with the westerly winds, while populated parts to the south of Western Australia, more of those easterly winds and thunderstorms as low pressure hangs around the Northern Territory right down into more southern parts of Western Australia. That produces instability. And Thursday of next week, the heat comes into Perth, so that's a hotter day for you by Thursday, fueled by easterly winds as well. That will keep it dry and windy and warm. Easterly winds for Victoria, South Australia as well, mostly dry in those areas. And you're seeing low pressure sort of hanging around Queensland and a wee bit into New South Wales. Thunderstorms, again, these are going to shift around a bit in the days ahead. So we'll have a look at the rain map in a second, and we've still got that heavy rain potential up around Cairns. That could be another couple of 100 millimetres. But just like all of these showers, It's moving around. There's nothing really big in here to just sort of lock it in for you all. Just lastly, a small bit of low pressure around Tasmania, just producing some west coast showers. So here's the rain map. Just going to quickly show you these two maps. American one here, this is the GFS model. You can see it's northern parts of New South Wales, eastern parts of New South Wales, the very eastern side of Victoria, western side of Tasmania, and then around Queensland, you've got this heavy rain potential up in the far north. Elsewhere, showers and thunderstorms that are forming around. Now, when you compare that to the European modelling, it shows more of the wet weather. So higher rainfall totals in the tropics, especially the Northern Territory and far north Queensland. And we're seeing more wet weather showing up in New South Wales. It's still mostly the northern and eastern sides. And this is going to change, I think. So I know it's frustrating if you either want rain or don't want rain, that I can't sort of confirm all this, but it's the nature of the weather maps at the moment. It is very messy. There's no sort of big, deep low or very clear line of convergence. It keeps changing because of the shape of the highs. So we'll be able to confirm that a wee bit more, I think, tomorrow as we do our Friday update. And obviously we'll be tracking this all again next week as well. Thanks for joining me. Thank you for all the great comments. I'll catch you again tomorrow, Friday.